People are always asking, what the hell do you do while you wait for your electric car to charge? Well, something like this. So we are at almost 100%, so I guess it's time to leave my picnic, oops, and get going with the electric journey we have today. So in this episode you're going to see how the BMW iX3 is like to drive on a highway and how far you can get on a single charge. Does it drive like a real BMW? And which is the best doner kebab you can eat in the city of Plovdiv. So hey guys, and welcome to the new episode of Full Throttle. Today we have the BMW iX3, which is the first family non-city electric car from BMW. And to test just how family and non-city car this car is, we're going to go on a little journey. It's going to be a 200-mile journey, which should be a breeze for this car, which has a range of almost 300 miles. But you know how electric cars are, so I'm very curious to see if we are going to make it. So we have 100% battery charge now. It's time to unplug it and let's go. Let's go over the plan. We're going from Sofia to Plovdiv, which is about 95 miles each way. The car has 332 kilometers of range right now, even though on the official test this figure is closer to 460 kilometers. Of course, you can never get that in the real world, and the conditions outside are very bad for electric cars. It's 3 degrees Celsius, it's raining and it's cold, so in these conditions maybe 250 kilometers is the best we're going to get, but still I'm very curious how the car will handle, especially on these conditions. Now, the BMW iX3 uses an 80 kilowatt battery, but only 74 of them are actually usable. So if we get consumptions about 20 kilowatts per hour, this means we should be able to get there. Of course, going back will be the hard part and we might need to charge somewhere between. But still, let's check out how far we can get with the BMW iX3. And yes, even though the conditions are not ideal, of course you are going to use that car in bad conditions too, so it's good to know how capable it is. Before we set off, let's make some adjustments. Now we are going to be driving at 140 kilometers per hour, which is the speed limit with the AC on, because there are many people driving EVs on the highway under the speed limit without an AC, and honestly, if that's the way you need to drive in order to get the range that is claimed, for me this range just isn't real. So we're going to be driving this car as if we're driving a petrol or a diesel powered one, and we'll see how it goes. If the range is declining very sharply, yes, we're going to make some adjustments, go in the Eco Pro mode and stuff like that, but at least in the beginning of this test I want to put the car in the comfort settings and to adjust everything normally. Even though this car isn't a Tesla with its high-level auto driving, here we have another system which is actually quite good. Here we have the assisted driving mode, which means the car is driving by itself. It stops when there's traffic and it makes turns, and at the same time it follows the traffic in real time on this monitor here, just like in a Tesla. Of course, you still have to keep your hands on the wheel at all times, but this is because of the regulations. You can see now we have some traffic coming up and there is a turn on the highway. I'm doing nothing and the car steer itself is very nice. There is no jerky movements and everything is extremely smooth. Now we have car in front and you see the car actually slowing down. This is extremely useful and I find this one of the best extras, especially for long highway drives. Now we are somewhere in the middle of our journey and let's check out what electric consumption we have. Here we have 25.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which probably doesn't make any sense to you, but is in fact pretty impressive for such a big car in such bad conditions. Now, if we keep this consumption, we just might be able to make the journey and come back on a single charge. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and we will keep monitoring how much electricity this car is using. But for now, it's truly impressive. But there's one thing I really don't like about this autonomous driving system, and which is the fact that when you have it on, you cannot just go to the right lane if there is someone behind you. You actually have to put out the right turn signal, and only then will the car allow you to switch lanes. And I get the point of that, but if someone is coming very fast in the left lane and you want to make a sharp turn right, the car will simply wrestle with you and not let you do that. And I think that's not the best solution, because at least not everybody is used to using turn signals, especially on the BMW. So we have stopped at the gas station right now, and honestly, it's a really weird feeling not having to fill up your car. Will one day all gas stations turn into electric stations? I'm not sure, maybe they will, but at least for now, seeing all these people filling up their cars with dead dinosaurs feels very obsolete. And the more I drive this car, the more I'm certain that electric cars are going to be the future of movement in 5 or 10 years. We are getting off the highway, which means that we're almost done with half of our journey. The battery is at 150 kilometers, which is a bit less than the half of it. Now, this means that we might be able to get back on the same charge, but maybe we'll have to recharge just a little bit to make sure that we don't get stuck. Now we get something to eat, and we'll analyze how much battery we have, we'll analyze what consumption the car did, and we'll decide what to do. So we are now officially in the city of Plovdiv. Here the weather is always nice, but today is shit. Anyway, we're going to grab something to eat, and we'll see what are we going to do on the way back. So after having this amazing and high-tech kebab, it was time to head back to our BMW. But because this is an electric car journey, there is no way we can skip the first Tesla supercharger in our country. And yeah, I know for you guys in the US that's not a big deal, but for us it kinda is, because this is not only the only Tesla supercharger in Bulgaria, but the only one in the whole Balkan region, so we had to check it out. So here we are in front of the first and only superchargers from Tesla in the whole country of Bulgaria. I know in the US you guys get tons of these things, but here those are the only ones, and not only in our country but even in the nearby country, so it's kind of a big deal. They're situated here in the city of Plovdiv, but unfortunately we cannot charge our BMW iX3 here because Tesla haven't made such arrangements still. There are some ideas that other brands might be able to use the superchargers in the future, but nothing really is certain yet. Still, it's kind of cool to see that, and if you're a Tesla owner in Bulgaria, this is a big deal. So it's time to go back to Sofia from where we started, and let's see what we have done until now. We have 50% of the battery left and 122 kilometers of range, which means that, at least in theory, we should be able to go back on a single charge. But we don't really want to risk getting without power on the highway, so we're going to charge the batteries up a little. But at least in theory, this BMW iX3 manages its battery very well, even in bad conditions such as these. So we've plugged our cars in the station. This one is from EVN, which is the official electricity company in Bulgaria, and is completely free. You need your own cable, and it's 22 kilowatts, which to compare, a Tesla supercharger is 150 kilowatts, and those for the Porsche Taycan might be up to 300, so it's pretty slow, but actually it's one of the fastest ones here in Plovdiv. And now we'll see how much time we're going to need here in order to get 20 or 30% of the battery back in order to be able to comfortably ride back home.
Later.
We are charging the car now, but we only have 10 kilowatts because the charging station doesn't have its own cable, and we have to use the one from BMW, which is limited at this speed. Now we have 100% battery at 9 o'clock, which is after 5 hours, so we need to stay 5 hours here if we needed the full battery, which is honestly ridiculous. And it only shows that the electric charging stations here in Bulgaria have still a long way to go before they are fully usable.
2,000 years later.
But the problem is, this isn't like brakes or airbags. Car firms don't test for lightning strikes, so I've no idea how it'll go.
Thankfully, we found a faster charging station with 50 kilowatts per hour, which meant that in about 15 minutes we managed to get 30% of the battery, which is much better. So we charged the car to 200 kilometers for a 140 kilometer journey, which seemed to be safe enough, and it was time to go. Unfortunately, even though it's April, we have this fucking snow, which is not good news for our electric car. We have about 70 kilometers left and about 70 kilometers of range left in the car. So it's really not, I'm really not sure that we're going to make it, but I'll show you inside how much range we have and what consumption the car is giving us. And let's hope in the German engineers that this BMW iX3 will manage to get us home. We have 50 kilometers for the journey and we have 73 range left. We left with 200 kilometers here on the range counter, so things are definitely not going as smooth as we wanted to, but we're still hopeful that we are going to make it. But to be quite honest, wondering if you can make a 100-mile journey is not the feeling I want to get when I purchase a car which costs around $70,000. Of course, with those bad road conditions, this is to be expected, but still, here we have 24 kilowatts per 100 kilometers of consumption, but you have to keep in mind that this time around we're driving much slower than the first. We're driving about 120 kilometers, 110, which is about 80 miles if I'm correct. So definitely a slow pace, but that's all we can do in those conditions. But on the other hand, the car is extremely stable even in the snow, and it feels very solid, which means that the fact that it lacks all-wheel drive, it's not really a problem, at least for now. So we have 30 kilometers till the end goal and we have 58 kilometers of range. Honestly, I think we are going to make it, but I'm always checking the numbers, and this is not a journey that I really enjoy. It's more of a survival mode, and that's not really cool. So we finally made it. We have 47 kilometers left of range and we are here. So the car managed to do it. Now, could we have done it on a single charge? I'm not sure, because the conditions were really bad. So in 0 degrees Celsius, and it was snowing and it was raining, so definitely not ideal conditions for this car. Maybe driving slower and with better conditions you could have done the run in one charge, but the iX3 managed to handle very well. It was amazing to drive on a highway, and overall it's a very good car for driving long distances. Just you gotta make sure to calculate that range, because trust me, electric cars are still not there, and especially the electric grid network here in Bulgaria is very far behind. Today's test demonstrated that the BMW iX3 is a very impressive electric car, but yet there is still a lot development needed in EVs as a whole to be usable on long distance journeys. Yes, you can get pretty far with the car, but not 300 miles as BMW claims. That's just ridiculous. And still at the same time you have to calculate in what conditions you're driving, how far you want to go, and of course where you can charge and at what speeds. And of course, if you're not ready yet for this thing because it's a lot of work, you can always get a good old diesel. Today we'll show you one very important and very interesting car that is the first fully electric SUV from BMW. And unlike the i3, this car actually looks normal this time and has more than 100 miles of range, which means you could actually buy it. So in today's episode we're going to answer a few questions. The first is this the best X3 you can buy? Is it better than the other competitors from Audi and Mercedes? And of course, how far can you go with this car and does it drive like a real BMW? So you can probably notice that this BMW iX3 looks like a normal BMW X3, and this really is the point of the car, because unlike the i3 and the i8, which are niche models, the X3 is BMW best-selling car, which means that BMW is actually planning to sell many of those cars, and that means that it can take any risks with this. So you get a very normal looking car, you get normal amount of horsepower, which is around 300, there are no flying doors, and pretty much if you didn't know, you could hardly tell that this car is even electric if it wasn't for the blue badging. So BMW isn't really taking many risks with the car, but I think that's a good thing, and that really is the point of this model. But definitely one of the coolest parts about this BMW iX3 are the noises it makes. You would think that because it's an electric car it would make no sound at all, but BMW have put a lot of effort in changing that. You get sounds composed by Hans Zimmer, who is the sound composer behind movies like Interstellar. So every time you start the car you hear this. Ta-da! And when you're driving and you press the acceleration, the car sounds like a spaceship accelerating forward. Which I think it's very cool, and it gives you some feedback on how fast you're driving, and you do feel like you're driving a spaceship. What's kind of creepy about this noise is that you don't only hear it inside the car but also outside the car, and for the people who have never seen this electric BMW before, it can be a bit shocking because it does sound like something from a sci-fi movie. Even when you're maneuvering, it's like... It's a rear-wheel drive BMW, so can it drift? Well, let's find out. We go traction off, we go into sport mode, and let's see. Not really. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work, but it does kind of slip the back, so you can definitely tell that it's a rear-wheel drive. The BMW iX3 comes only in the rear-wheel drive version, so we would have enough grip here in these damp and wet conditions. Let's find out. We'll try to do a launch control, even though there is no launch control. We just press the accelerator, nothing really happens, and off we go. Absolutely no problems with traction whatsoever. And another thing that's not so cool about the BMW iX3 is the fact that it has less ground clearance than the current model. The reason for that is of course the electric batteries which are under the floor, but this means you get 2 centimeters less clearance, which might not be ideal if you're planning on going off-road. So one very interesting thing that you probably have noticed is that on the gear lever there is a B mode. That is on the place where you normally get a manual, but here we don't have manual gear changes of course, so the B mode is actually for regenerative braking. This is the mode where the car actually brakes itself and it charges the batteries that way. And when you're driving, the idea is to drive with one pedal only. So you have the accelerator, and when you want to stop, you just lift your foot from the accelerator and the car stops by itself. And the idea behind that is that the car actually charges the batteries as it stops, and you are driving without using the brake at all. It definitely takes some time to get used to it, because when you step in an electric car for the first time, it does feel a bit aggressive and like you don't know how to drive, because the car is constantly jerking forward and backward, and it's a bit weird. But when you get used to it, you actually get the sense that it's very easy to drive this way, and at the same time it's more efficient. So let's talk about the design of the BMW iX3. Now, the car does look fairly normal, as we already said, but there's one main difference between this car and the petrol-powered versions, and of course this is the grille. Here you get this new electric grille, which is supposed to look futuristic, and half of it is closed because of course there is no engine here, but you still get some holes here which you can put your hand into. I think it looks okay. It's a little bit weird, but not as offensive as the other new BMW grills. Also, you have a blue badge, which means it's an electric BMW, in case you didn't know, and you also get these blue accents here to remind people that the car is of course electric. If you want, you can spec those things to be black, but mostly people who are buying electric cars want everybody to know that they're driving electric cars. The rest of the front is pretty much the same, which means it looks good, smart, and there isn't anything really interesting to talk about. You only get these side vents here, which are a bit bigger, and some of the lines are a bit smoother to improve the aerodynamics of the car, which of course is very important when we're talking about electric vehicles. On the side of the car, the first thing you notice are of course the aerodynamic wheels. Here we have the 19-inch one, and there are 20-inch ones, which are of course a pricey option. Now, those wheels don't really look that good, but they do improve the range with about 5%, which is a huge number, and you're going to see more or less all the electric cars wearing those. And you get this silver piece here, which is supposed to be taken from the other BMW models, but frankly it does look weird, and of course it's not a real air vent. So the back of this BMW iX3 looks very normal, and it does look quite good, just like the regular X3. The only differences are of course the fact that you don't have any tailpipes, and they're replaced with those aerodynamic elements which kind of look like they're supposed to have pipes here, but there aren't any of course because it's an electric car. You also get a bigger spoiler here on the roof, but you probably will never even notice that, and overall it's a clean and a good looking car. The whole point of the BMW iX3 is that you don't have to make any compromises by choosing an electric car, and the space in the boot is also a big part of this, because here you get the same 500 liters you get in the regular X3. It's only 40 liters less, but this isn't the actual space here, but only this compartment down here that is changed with this hole where the cables are. And also it's pretty cool how it closes with this clickable sound. Let's check out what's under the hood of this BMW iX3. Of course, there is no engine, but there should be a front, right? Well, unfortunately not. BMW has placed this plastic cover here, which kind of resembles the shape of an engine, and you cannot store your things there because there's absolutely no storage space. And if you're wondering what's under this, you get a bunch of wires and parts of the electric motor, which is kind of not cool because you get less practicality than other electric cars. BMW has even left a sign here saying "Do not touch under the hood," but of course I will have to take that risk for you guys. Nothing happened. Now, when you step in the interior of the BMW iX3, you could hardly tell that this is a different car than the petrol or the diesel versions. In fact, you get the very same center console, you get a gear lever even though there are no gears, you get the same dash and the same layout. So BMW has tried really hard not to differentiate this car from the standard BMW interior experience, which is made for an easier transition for the clients who are buying their first electric BMW. Still, there are some things here that give it away. For example, you have this blue line here on the gear lever, you have a blue start and stop button, and you have blue here on the badge on the dash, but everything else is just the same as the regular BMW X3. But that's not a bad thing at all. The quality is amazing, you get super comfortable seats, the layout is super easy, the iDrive system is of course very easy to use and navigate, and pretty much there are no complaints about the interior. It's only a little boring, if I might say. But the big news about the interior of the BMW iX3 is the fact that you don't lose any space compared to the petrol and the diesel versions, and that of course is thanks to the fact that the batteries are mounted below the seats, which means that the car is just as practical and just as roomy as the standard X3. You get plenty of knee room, you get plenty of headspace, and you can even sit 3 adults comfortably here. The seats are super comfortable, you get a separate climate vent, 2 USB-C ports, and pretty much everything you would want in a family car. So overall, the BMW iX3 is truly an amazing car. And yes, BMW was the last of the German manufacturers to present their version of the electric SUV, but I honestly think their one is the best. It's the lightest, it has the most stable battery, and it's the most fun to drive. Where the E-Tron is way too heavy and the EQC is way too numb, the BMW iX3 manages to do everything an electric car should be able to do, and at the same time it remains as fun as a BMW should be.